This is something that everyone who has seen Tokyo Ghoul can admit to. Kaneki goes through a lot. Whether or not anyone chooses to accept what I just said, there's one thing that you can never take away from Kaneki, and that would be his character progression. Starting off, I guess you could say Kaneki really has the personality that you would come to expect from your average introvert. He likes books, doesn't really socialize, and probably has like one real friend. Does that sound familiar? Really, this part of Kaneki really ties into who he is. At times, he even goes as far as quoting his favorite books and relating them to exactly what's happening in his everyday life. The books that Kaneki reads really make him who he is. And understanding that is actually quite simple. As a child, books were the only thing that Kaneki really had. As drastic as that sounds, unfortunately, it is very true. And there's actually a specific reason for this. The books that Kaneki read belonged to his father, and at times he would feel lonely, so when he was reading them, it would feel like he was talking to his dad who wasn't really there. A dad that he never knew. Yet he would find comfort in doing such a thing. You could say that it's very human. And even so, when finding comfort through reading his books, Kaneki would need a reason to be comfortable in the first place. So it really makes you ask, what made Kaneki uncomfortable? On a day-to-day basis, Kaneki would be abused by his mother. This would without a doubt traumatize him. And much like other human beings, and most likely you watching this video, might have some form of trauma whether you know it or not. As human beings, we all have some type of problem, and our own specific way for dealing with that. Kaneki's way of dealing with it just so happened to be his books. Kaneki is just like you or me. At least he was in the beginning. Until a freakish accident happened and he became part ghoul, making him half human, half ghoul. This would also affect Kaneki's character psychologically because everything he knew up until now would eventually be ripped out of his life. His favorite food in general, and even his friend could be dangerous to him, pushing him so far that he would have to inevitably keep a secret from his friend and live a lie. With the worst part being that deep down in the back of his mind, he craves to eat the people that are standing right next to him. And it's something that he can't help, and it's a feeling that he never truly experienced before. Even then, this makes his opportunity at living in society even slimmer because unlike other ghouls, Kaneki would lack experience, which would more often than not put him in situations he really wouldn't want to be in. Kaneki still has a perspective of ignorance, yet he's pulled into the ghoul world while still not understanding their dynamics. This is where Kaneki's evolutionary phase truly begins to start. And this is all because he is forced to adapt and learn about the world around him, and accept what he's truly become, for better or for worse. At this stage in Kaneki's life, he begins to see the good and the bad from humans and ghouls alike. What Kaneki begins to slowly realize is that his kindness really just isn't enough. Between the CCG and ghouls alike, they both have their own motivations and reasons for doing everything throughout society. And even so, Kaneki, as a regular human being, beginning to understand the perspective of ghouls and humans alike. And at this point, Kaneki's ignorance keeps him from being where he wants to be. This is why Yamori was able to take advantage of Kaneki in the first place. He understood how naive Kaneki was, and this is what allowed him to lie to Kaneki and cause the next stage in Kaneki's evolution. Deep down, Kaneki really didn't trust Yamori, but he still went ahead with what was happening regardless. And this is due to his belief that it's better to be hurt rather than to hurt others. As strange as it may sound, Kaneki's thought process had allowed his life to turn out the exact way he wanted it to. He eventually became the person who got hurt. But in this case, he wasn't protecting anyone, by being hurt himself. Even so, there's one thing that allows us to understand why Kaneki would be like this. He admits to wanting to die heroically. In the grand scheme of things, he would have died for others. But in the end, all that was left was the very fact that he got tortured and he saved no one. And the torture Yamori puts Kaneki through causes him to evolve for better or worse. Really, at this point, he begins to understand that everything that he knew was a lie. And the most disturbing aspect around this torture is the very deconstruction of Kaneki's character. So much so that he eventually loses his mind. And this happens once the centipede is put inside of his ear. Now, why does Kaneki have to go through such torture at all? Really, it seems like Yamori is trying to show Kaneki the reality of the world around him. When Yamori shows a mother and child in front of Kaneki and he tells him to choose which one of them gets to live, Kaneki never truly makes a choice and instead suggests to Yamori that he should be the one to die. And in a fit of frustration, Yamori ends up killing both the mother and her child, only to walk away and call Kaneki a hypocrite. Kaneki sacrificed himself to Yamori because he wanted to save everyone around him. Yet when the opportunity comes to save someone, he doesn't even try. There's a reason why Yamori calls Kaneki a hypocrite. Deep down, Kaneki never really wanted to save anyone. He really just wanted to die. Which is why he would not only offer up his own life in this situation, but also even admit that he wanted to die. This truly shows how Kaneki's torture really breaks him down as a character. Yamori was showing Kaneki that with his current mindset of sacrificing himself only to save others, he would eventually become the sole reason as to why other people would die, because he would not take the matter into his own hands and save them. Kaneki wants to save people, but how can he save anyone if he's dead? This way of thinking comes from not only his mother, but his trauma as a child. Yamori would torture and inflict pain on Kaneki, yet this would be no different to the same pain that Kaneki's mother would put him through. Be somebody who knows pain instead of somebody who hurts. This is something that Kaneki would think his mother taught him. Yet Kaneki's mother would be the same person that would hurt Kaneki on a day-to-day basis. To be somebody who knows pain instead of somebody who hurts is something that Kaneki didn't learn from his mother, but something that he learned from her abuse. This is why Kaneki calls out to his mother while he's being tortured. Yamori is hurting Kaneki just like how his mother did. Yamori's torture caused Kaneki's childhood trauma to resurface, and this time he began to face it and evolve past it. And by doing so, psychologically, he became Yamori. Rather than being the person who is being tortured, Kaneki became the person that was torturing him. Which is why you would see Kaneki do the same finger crack as Yamori, because mentally he would become just like him. And if you're wondering why Kaneki didn't fight Yamori like he did earlier, this would be because he didn't want to be the person to hurt others, and he didn't want to use a power that he could not control because he was afraid of hurting the people that he loved. And here we have the next stage in Kaneki's evolution. At this point in time, Kaneki has eaten countless ghouls, and this is all in order for him to be able to have enough strength to protect everyone around him. Deep down, Kaneki didn't want to kill anyone, but he simply chose the lives of his friends and his loved ones over everyone else, and this just goes to show how selfish Kaneki really is. And the worst part about it all is the fact that Kaneki is still a hypocrite. Kaneki became strong in order to protect everyone, and while being tortured, he avoided using his powers because he did not want to hurt anyone from not being able to control himself. Yet everything Kaneki was afraid of happening, he is allowing to happen. He does everything in order to protect his friends, but he ends up hurting them. Which makes you ask, did Kaneki really evolve? Did Kaneki really change? Even after everything that has happened up until now? With the next form of Kaneki's evolution, you could quite possibly argue that he's not even the same person. Easily the most depressing aspect about Haise Sasaki would be his psychological makeup. As Haise Sasaki, Kaneki would be living a lie wholeheartedly, and he would know this, even admitting deep down that while living with a family, he would know that it's not his true family. Rather than facing his trauma, Kaneki would choose to run away from it, which also shows how selfish he really is. As Haise Sasaki, Kaneki just truly wants to be happy. And all of the friends that he knew while he was living his life as Kaneki would want the same. That's why they allow him to be Haise Sasaki. Kaneki's loved ones just wanted him to be happy. Now, how would Kaneki evolve into becoming Haise Sasaki? This could also be compared to his torture, because while he was in Koklia, which is a prison for ghouls, time was eating away at him and his mental state was beginning to wear down as he was being fed lies about everything that had happened around him. This got to a point where Kaneki didn't even know who he was anymore. Yet he somehow still managed to bond with Arima, and this is because of one sole thing that Kaneki attaches himself to: books. When he was at his worst, beat down mentally, the very thing that helped him as a child, the very thing that helped him deal with his trauma, was thrown to him while he was in his cell. And it just so happened to be a book from Arima. When it comes to Arima, Kaneki would go as far as to calling him a teacher and even acknowledge him as his father. And there's a specific reason for this. When Kaneki used to read his dad's books when he was younger, he felt like he was talking to him. And this would help him cope. And with Kaneki at his worst, Arima would give him a book. Kaneki would read Arima's books and calm down, just like how he would read his father's books as a child. When Kaneki read Arima's books, he felt like he was talking to him, just like how he felt like he was talking to his father when he was a child, which lets you understand why he would call Arima his father. Arima would even name Kaneki Haise, and then they would live their artificial lives. After living a lie for so long, Kaneki would evolve into the Black Reaper. As the Black Reaper, Kaneki becomes fed up with continuing to live a lie. He begins to accept all of his trauma and use it as a new source of strength. At this point, Kaneki acknowledges all the trauma his mother put him through, and he begins to finally move past it. As Black Reaper Kaneki, he would resemble the Reaper Arima. In this case, he would be just like Arima and even inflict the same pain that Arima made him feel onto others. Arima stabbed Kaneki through the brain, and so Kaneki does the same to someone else. This experience would be quite similar to the torture that Yamori put Kaneki through. Only this time, rather than becoming Yamori, Kaneki would become Arima. You could say Kaneki is insane because he becomes other people who he's not and uses it as a source of strength. And while fighting Arima, Kaneki evolves again, and this time he begins to accept himself and all of his flaws. And rather than living in order to die heroically, he chooses to live and survive. And with this next evolution of Kaneki, he evolves in a similar fashion as he did in the previous form. He clings on his will to live, except there's a catch with this form. It's the very fact that he takes every single form of himself and molds it into one, making him become Dragoneki. And with this evolution, he completely embodies the source of his trauma from Yamori's torture, with that being the centipede. Kaneki begins to take the form and the shape of a centipede and rains hell throughout Tokyo. And he does this all so that he can protect the people around him. And with that, you may begin to notice a pattern. Every time Kaneki tries to protect the people around him, he may just put them at risk. And as Dragoniki, he does just that, making it so that everyone in Tokyo is indiscriminately attacked by the minions he creates. Kaneki trying to save everyone put him into a situation where everyone has to try and save him. The sadness of it all is that they're trying to save him from himself. Psychologically, Kaneki intended to save everyone, yet he actually ended up killing people in the process, which really just goes to show again that Kaneki is a hypocrite and continues to make the same mistakes. Really, we begin to understand that all Kaneki wanted was to be needed. Even so, it just takes away from his loneliness that he felt his entire life. In the end, was he really just trying to console himself? And here we have Kaneki's final evolution, where he demands to be able to protect and save everyone. And Kaneki's overall belief of the world begins to change. He begins to believe that the world is just, and he accepts pushing through and fighting no matter what, even if everything he does seems meaningless. Even so, all you can really do, just like Kaneki, is keep moving forward and evolving, and you will find the strength to do whatever it is that you want to do. With so many different things and traumas that could be potentially holding you back, deep down, you and I both know that you have what it takes to adapt and, most importantly, evolve. Just like Kaneki.